Yeah, not at all. No, I would go to school, but I would try not to go to school. I had friends who they were a little older than me. They had an apartment. I would try to like go there before school and come to school late. And I I laugh at the question because the thing I like going to school about, the reason I like to go to school was to try to get out of school. That was my favorite thing.
Today, we're joined by Ross Gay, an award-winning poet, essayist, and professor whose work has reshaped how so many people think about joy, care, and community. Ross, it's great to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Good to be here.
What did your days look like inside and outside the classroom? I mean, more importantly, had poetry already become an integral part of your life?
So I was not thinking about poems. I was thinking about like basketball, and I was thinking about football. And I mean, my mom, it's funny, my dear mom, she's alive, she's 84. And she's just like, so you must have read this in high school, right? And I'm like, I didn't read anything in high school. I didn't do high school. I went to high school, but I didn't the way I did high school was more like, so me and Felix's dad know each other. We're dear friends since, we're like 8 years old. Scott did school. But me and Jay, our other friend, not so much. So we kind of got out of it. So anyway, your question is like, were you into poems or thinking about poetry? Not even close. That being said, the way that we were being like, say, naughty, the way that we were being evasive in school, the way that we were like dodging schoolwork, the way that, some of us were like, being goofing off. In retrospect, I'm like, oh, that's very much the same kind of intellectual pursuit as making a metaphor, as doing this kind of stuff that now you'd call art, now you'd call writing, now you'd call poems. So that's one thing that I want to say. Like a lot of the stuff that we were doing in school that was called being bad was the same shit that is what you would do to be making poems. You'd be thinking outside of, out of the side of the box. But you're being creative. You're like trying to get around things. You're making connections where, maybe you're not supposed to be making connections, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I was deep into music. So even when I was not reading books at all, I was reading the liners of records and tapes back in the day. They all had the lyrics. And so I was studying these lyrics, and those lyrics are obviously like close cousins to poems. So I wasn't writing poems, I wasn't thinking about poems that I knew of, but I was in these other ways.
Do you think if you could go back, would you change anything?
Great question. So on principle, everything happens because on principle, I would not go back and change anything. That being said, did I learn things from that experience that translated into making poems or this? Absolutely. I mean, among the things is like, being in those kinds of intense relationships with people, working towards something, whatever, being in pain with each other, those things. Yeah. There is a kind of strange, like profound tenderness that I feel like it was sort of after it might have been a little bit in the midst of the fact, but a little bit more after the fact that I realized, oh, this is like fundamental to my life and my well-being, being in community, being in tight community with people.
Yeah, I think even like playing a soccer game and, you're battling it out on the field, and then afterwards, you shake each other's hand, say good game.
Yeah.
And that's that. Especially here at Christ School, I think coming from a sort of more public school environment, that sort of brotherhood and like you said, like tenderness, community. I think it's kind of shown me that it's more important than I once realized.
Totally. And there's also the thing of, and it's a beautiful thing about sport if it allows, I think there's so many really stupid things about sport. Obviously, like there's ways that competition is just, ridiculous and like not useful. But there are these other things that happen, which are like sometimes, two people doing beautiful things in each other's midst make each other do more beautiful things. Like that's sort of, I have a buddy who he laughs at me when I say, yeah, man, like this is 20 years ago. And I'd be like, yeah, I want to go play, or 25 years ago, I want to go play. Cause every time I play ball, something beautiful might happen.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, man, bullshit. Like, cause he knew my game was mostly just elbows and shit. But I truly mean that. I mean that the instance of joining with other people to try to make something, the game, which is more significant than any individual, is really beautiful. And that the beauty might be turned up by virtue of being against someone who's very good at their craft. There's something really moving about that, and I think instructive about it too.
At the beginning of some of your books, especially Beholding, the one that you read an excerpt from, of the move from Dr. J.
Yeah.
I was noticing that in sort of the first part of the acknowledgments, or like the gratuitous section, you thank a few names. Some of them being, Allen Iverson, Christina Sharp, Fred Moten, and a few more. And I was reading it and I was like, I wonder like what the reason behind this is, because I'm from a sort of newer generation, so some of these names are familiar to me, but some of them aren't.
Yeah.
And I guess how do you decide who you dedicate your poems to, or who you decide to?
Gratitude.
Yeah.
That whole book is really a kind of long, extended meditation in a certain kind of way. It's like there's all these lineages running through that book, and like people who, Dr. J himself is a kind of predecessor to all of this, beautiful basketball that we watch now. But it's also like a principle as a writer that I like to think, which is that I am not solely myself ever, and never could be, and would never want to be. Like I am made of all of these writers, all of these friends, all of these voices that that I'm lucky enough to sort of periodically get to have a voice on account of them.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. Sort of just, you're not just you, you're all the people that came before you.
That's right.
Just paying sort of homage to everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, I've always enjoyed writing myself.
Yeah.
I've taken some of the English classes here. My writing process, we'll have like an essay in class, and we'll sit down, we'll have some quiet time. We have a computer, and then when I go home and I have like an essay due the next day, it's like I go to maybe Starbucks or something. And so everyone has a different process, but your poems are very sort of, they feel like inspired. Like sometimes, especially, like when you're writing your Book of Delights, I mean, I know you mentioned you write them just, sometimes when you're in transit or whatever. But what does that process look like,
So for every piece, there's a different, more or less, there's a kind of different process. But anything that I've written that I want to read it comes out of a question. It's not like an assertion of knowledge, or it's not an expression. It's an inquiry, and it's a wondering. And so if I were to say that there's a guiding sort of, I forget what the word you used was, but like strategy for how I write, it's that I have questions, and then I proceed to sort of try to figure out how to either articulate or illuminate, or maybe sometimes get closer to an answer to those questions. But often, as I was saying earlier this morning, I think the best thing that happens is that maybe I get closer to that question, or maybe I'm even answer an aspect of that question, but in the answering of the question, all these other questions open up.
Yeah, it's like the more you know, the more you realize
the more
you don't
know.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that like, since it's a writing question, that to me is what makes writing so pleasurable. Like you don't know what's going to happen. So even if I, write an essay ostensibly about, the visit to a garden of someone who I love, and I'm just going to I know that I'm going to tell the story of this thing that I went through. My my thing now is that even if I'm writing about this experience I've had, I know that I'm going to wonder about it. I'm not just going to tell it. I'm going to wonder about it. And the wondering about it means I have no idea ever what's going to come, you know? So that's like, which makes it fun. Because it's a little bit like, I remember I had this experience recently where I was writing every day. I was on this book tour. I was writing a book called Book Tour. And I would, every day after I'd, have a reading somewhere in Wichita or Asheville even, I would go and write for a little bit, an entry. And one day I realized like, I felt like I was going down to like watch my favorite show because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, okay, like I'm kind of learning how to write. I'm learning how to write because it's really feeling like what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's powerful. Can you ever tell if you're writing something and you're like, oh, this is not going to pan out into something that's, worthwhile, or do you keep going, or how does that look like?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like I'll have little starts. I'm trying to think of like an example of something recently. I'm writing a book right now called Why I Garden. And it's just like, it's all of the essays begin with the word to, and they're like, to bring back the dead, or to commune with the honeybees, or to blah, blah, blah. And periodically, a few times recently, I've even had like a thing where I start it and I'm just like, okay, this is just not good. It's like not interesting. And it happens. I mean, it happens frequently.
Yeah.
It might happen more than the other thing happens actually, but I know like one of the ways that I can kind of have that happen a little bit less is to really not know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
When I know like, I'm writing, I'm going to tell this thing and I know what I'm going to write and I got some knowledge to impart. And that's a problem. Sometimes I have knowledge to impart. And when I try to impart that knowledge, I can fuck an essay up bad.
Yeah.
I can mess it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, when you have like a structure, if you're not filling it out how you want to fill it out, it's easy to tell when you're messing it up.
Yeah, totally.
But the less of a plan you have, the more pleasurable the writing is.
Yeah. You surprise yourself. You didn't know it was going to go there.
Would you recommend people try and, before bed or in the morning, write a delight or something?
Oh yeah. If that, or some manner of articulating to yourself or maybe to someone else what you love, what was given to you that day, how you were lucky, like, a kindness that you received. I mean, those things, like we just in class the other day, I did a exercise and the exercise is simple. All it is write a letter to someone who was kind to you, who was incredibly kind to you and they don't even know that they were. For instance, today, or I mentioned this in the earlier thing, sitting next to the woman on the airplane, that she like tapped my arm and said, look at that sunset, because the sunset was beautiful coming into Asheville over the mountains. And she said, doesn't get more beautiful than that, or doesn't get any better than that. It's a profound kindness. She's long forgotten that she told me to look at that sunset. I might remember that for a long time.
Well, I mean, as we wrap it up, I'm curious, these kids, trying to balance ambition and gratitude. Is there anything crucial you think you feel the need to say to the kids?
Wondering about what you love. Like, what do I love? 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 Like that feels like just a plain old useful question. Like, what do I love? What do I love feels like a question that might incline us to, in addition to articulating and wondering about and maybe sharing what we love with other people, it seems like it might also be a question that might incline us toward one another.
Yeah.
I think maybe.
It's about our time, I think.
That's great. This is fun.
No, but I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have
Great questions. Yeah.